when it comes to films about war and warriors, Stanley Kubrick is a master.
He knows what he's doing. But you know, the real buried subject here is our disagreement about Full Metal Jacket, and I would be very surprised if you like that movie in 30 years as much as you like this one today. I don't think it's going to hold up that well. It's not one of his great films.
In the world of films as made today, Full Metal Jacket is a film to recommend. Full Metal Jacket is a very, very fine film.
Hello and welcome to Back to the Feature, the show where we talk about movies past, present, and future. Today we're going 30 years in the past again to talk about Stanley Kubrick's war film classic, Full Metal Jacket.
This is heavy duty, Doc. This is great.
Full Metal Jacket is probably one of the most famous examples of Stanley Kubrick's work, and one of the movies that I think most people think of when they think of Stanley Kubrick. I mean, personally, for me, some of my favorite movies are The Shining, A Clockwork Orange, Dr. Strangelove.
2001: A Space Odyssey.
2001. Yeah. He has so many great films, and this one for me is definitely one of my favorite war films and one of my favorite Kubrick films, especially after our watch for this review. So, John, what is maybe some of your history with Full Metal Jacket, Kubrick, and what did you think watching it this time?
Well, a little history. I mean, our history started, I think Kubrick, we started together. I remember watching A Clockwork Orange. We went down to the local video store, picked it up on VHS.
VHS tape.
VHS, and it was like, we had to ask her to search and dig out of a box where this thing was. And just kind of, that was our first experience with it. I remember we stayed up all night, just kind of talking about what we thought of it and what to think of it. It's just, because it's so different. Stanley Kubrick brings, such a different and unique presence to filmmaking. Yeah, he has gravitas as a filmmaker and has a presence to the way that he films things and the kind of the humor and the darkness and just sort of the things that he brings to it that are Kubrickian in that sense. I think that was definitely my first experience. Hilarious though that we were watching that. I was still on VHS tape at that point. I think after that, though, for me, it was definitely Shining. Was kind of the next big one on the list. I can't remember what I watched next.
It could have been Full Metal Jacket. I know that we had watched that one together as well. But The Shining is one that sticks out for me. It's still probably my favorite Kubrick film. I love horror, and I think that's probably the greatest horror movie made, I think. I'm very bad at the ranking thing. I don't like to rank things, so it's definitely one of my favorite horror movies of all time.
It's always stuck up here. It's always been stuck up here, and that's something that Stanley Kubrick does. It's something with his camera work and his techniques that just it brings this presence, this presence that you feel inside the movie, and it's really hard to put your thumb on what exactly that he is doing. But all of his movies have it.
I think that this movie definitely does in Full Metal Jacket. I know a lot of people always think about the first act of this film, and when they're with the drill sergeant and when they're in boot camp, a lot of people think about that part. But I think that this movie is filled with what you're talking about, which is long-lasting, iconic imagery that when you're done seeing it, you think about it, and you don't just think about the characters, but you think about the images presented and what they think and the feelings that they evoke. And I think that Stanley Kubrick just does that better, as you're saying, than a lot of other directors. Yeah. And has so many movies with so many iconic shots in it. Even small things. It's just the way that he does it. There's just something different about it.
And I know this movie is a lot of long takes, lots of tracking shots, lots of really impressive set pieces.
I always think of meticulous care whenever I think of Kubrick. There's a meticulousness to his technique, to his process. There's such a... I think that he always has such a fierce image of what he wanted and what he wanted each movie to be. That I think that it gives something like this, that extra push, especially visually.
Yeah.
So, John, what were your thoughts then going into this viewing, and how was this viewing maybe different than your previous viewings?
Well, I think this one is I was really wanting to break it down. I really wanted to study it, especially with the history that Full Metal Jacket has, with it being divided in a way that it is. And a lot of people complain about that, or it's a complaint that often gets brought up.
It's a common criticism.
Yep, that it doesn't follow the typical 3-act structure. It's just edited and broken up in such a way the first half always gets praised so much for being just electric and you just mesmerizing, you remember it. Whereas the second half, a lot of people don't think it lives up to the first half. It is a really interesting way to tell the story, and I was really trying to, break it down this time. And Kubrick, honestly, he's the type of filmmaker where you can watch his movies dozens of times and still pick up new things every single time. And I'm not quite there yet with Full Metal Jacket. I feel like it definitely warrants a few more viewings to fully grasp what Stanley Kubrick's intentions were. The message in the movie is clear. It's definitely anti-war, but it's also showing just kind of like the chaos that was Vietnam War, and just kind of all those different juxtapositions and all these different.
It's definitely that idea.
Hypocrisy. Hypocrisy, showing the hypocrisy of like the media. Portraying what was actually happening, and just like how we train troops to go in, and just how different it was from what we were typically known to do in like World War II or World War I.
There's definitely this sick, sadistic thing to the nature of a lot of the characters, and it definitely has to do with the product of like where they are. But I think that there's something about the mean-spiritedness of like a lot of the things that are going on and a lot of the things that the characters are saying that I think really are a big part of what Kubrick is trying to say, I think, in that way that, like, war makes beasts of us all kind of thing. And I think, especially when you break down, like, what it means for the characters at large, I think that's a lot of what you see with the stories, especially with Vincent D'Onofrio character in the first half, and then really kind of coming full circle on Joker by the end of the movie.
Yep.
Like I said, people praise that first half. Vincent D'Onofrio was amazing that first half, and he's always been a great actor. I really enjoy him and so much of his work, and this is definitely the thing that really put him, I think, on the map for a lot of people. He's such a talented character actor, and this is like a feather in his cap kind of performance. Like, this is one that everyone will remember him for.
He brings some of those subtleties to his role in Kingpin too.
Yeah.
So he's perfect at that. But I mean, really, the big standout though is Ronald Lee Ermey.
Private Joker, why did you join my beloved corps? Sir, to kill, sir. So you're a killer? Sir, yes, sir. Let me see your war face. Sir, you got a war face? Ah, that's a war face. Now let me see your war face. Ah! Bullshit, you didn't convince me. Let me see your real war face. Ah! You don't scare me. Work on it. Sir, yes, sir. What's your excuse?
Sir, excuse for what, sir?
I'm asking the fucking questions here, Private. Do you understand?
Sir, yes, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Can I be in charge for a while?
Sir, yes, sir.
Are you shook up? Are you nervous?
Sir, I am, sir.
Do I make you nervous?
Sir.
Sir, what? Are you about to call me an asshole?
Sir, no, sir.
How tall are you, Private?
Sir, 5'9", sir.
5'9". I didn't know they stacked shit that high. You trying to squeeze an inch in on me somewhere, huh?
Sir, no, sir.
Bullshit. It looks to me like the best part of you ran down to cracking your mama's ass and ended up as a brown stain on the mattress. I think you've been cheated. Where in the hell are you from anyway, Private?
Sir, Texas, sir.
Holy dog shit. Texas, only steers and queers come from Texas, Private Cowboy. And you don't much look like a steer to me, so that kind of narrows it down.
It's one of the most memorable characters just in any film, and I think his performance in it makes this movie's boot camp one of the best examples of any boot camp. And it's really shot, it's very documentary style in the way that he shows it, just all the different things that are going on. It's such a good example, of military boot camp. Yeah. But his performance was just amazing, and we just did a review of The Untouchables, and we were talking about Sean Connery getting Best Supporting Actor. We were just kind of I don't know about that. Wasn't even nominated.
Yeah, I think that when this year starts to unfold, talking about Sean Connery getting that, like, I think we're going to see a lot of this. These performances that you gave him an Oscar, but this didn't even get a nomination.
Yeah, it's iconic. It's iconic. And I mean, you could argue, well, that's what he did for a living before that. So how much acting was he really doing? But I mean, guys, he was on a set, he was on set, he had people watching him, these were the actors. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. And just to hold that, that demeanor and what he was doing, impressive.
It's an impressive performance. And it's the thing that sticks out. I think that, one of the things, as far as this movie goes, I think that one of the things that hurts it, is that it hurts the second half anyway, is that it's so similar to films that came before it. Just this last year, earlier in the year, we did Platoon, and that's a movie with very similar themes, it's the same setting, and I think there's a lot of things that it touches on that also are touched on in Full Metal Jacket. And then you also have Apocalypse Now, which came before it. And I think that that's where the second half of the film kind of suffers, is because it feels like things that we've seen before in other previous great, iconic war films. But it's the stuff at the boot camp that sets the movie apart. It makes it different than any others.
Yeah.
Because it's the first time we think anyone had ever seen it portrayed like that, with kind of like any of that rose tint off of it. Like I said, with all of the sadisticness and the mean-spiritedness all kind of wrapped up in this thing. You know, the way that they turn on Lawrence, on Private Pyle. You know what I mean? Just all these things that happen in the boot camp, the way that they're talked to, the way that they're treated.
And I love the story that he gets when he brings up the assassination of JFK, and he's just talking about, he hit him at 250 feet moving, 3 shots, one of the head, one of the chest, and then just that slow, panned in shot to Vincent's face, and he's just kind of, Private Pyle. But it's just those examples, why they didn't miss, because they were Marines, and just kind of it's showing, we know that Stanley Kubrick was very anti-war, yeah. With Dr. Strangelove and Paths of Glory, and then this one too, but, the first half, the second half suffers, but I think a lot of people, the movie is just different. It's so different. The themes of the movie never falter. What the message of the movie is, it never falters. What are you looking at, when you're watching it? What are you digging out of it? I mean, you lose some of those really important characters right off the bat, but the movie just keeps going. Those themes don't stop, until the end. Which at the end, with Joker's character, when it comes full circle, all those different, parallels to the character and what Stanley Kubrick's message was. It's so interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely to be expected. With a Kubrick film, it's going to have deep themes and messages, things written and sort of woven throughout the film. So, kind of to get a little bit away from Kubrick, let's talk about maybe a couple of the other elements of this movie. What did you think about the actors, specifically Matthew Modine? We talked a little bit about Vincent D'Onofrio. What did you think about the acting in this film?
I think there's standouts.
Yeah.
Matthew Modine, I think he does a good job. There's nothing wrong. It's not he's a much more subtle character. He's a much more absorbent character. He's just kind of taking it all in. It's kind of we're kind of seeing the war through him. And then it's more, visualize how Kubrick does. Platoon, you got the narration on top of it. Same with Apocalypse Now.
There's definitely a lot more strong characterization, I think, in Platoon than particularly in Full Metal Jacket. I think that movie's more about the characters, though.
Stanley Kubrick is known for not having those characters that are the strong characterization. It's more about the themes.
Yeah, than kind of a more character-driven story.
Visual storytelling.
I feel like with Matthew Modine, I feel like he does a fine job throughout, and it's really when he gets to that last shot there with the sniper. That I think that I saw where he wasn't just there, just kind of coasting or doing something that anyone else could have done. Thought that was really his moment. And when I was watching the movie this time, I was kind of okay, that's why they hired him, because he did a really fantastic job in conveying what was going on with Joker with just his face in that scene. That I was okay, I see why he put Matthew Modine in this role. Because otherwise, it's just kind of some serviceable stuff. It's not anything that's going to blow you away. Like I said, it's standouts like Vincent D'Onofrio that really pop out. The guy that I really like in it is Adam Baldwin as Animal. He stands out. Obviously we know him now like Jane Cobb in Firefly, and I think other television and movies and stuff like that. He's a guy that kind of pops up to play a tough guy, and he knows how to play the tough guy but also do the comedy well. He's kind of sick but dumb and funny at the same time.
Yeah, he doesn't know why.
He brings a good levity to it. I love the interaction between him and Joker, where they're kind of having a battle of wits when they first meet. I think it's a really fun scene and helps kind of break up some of the darker themes and things that are going on.
This movie is dark. Just watching clips and doing some research on the film, it's just it's so heavy. It's just Kubrick. It's just a movie that sticks with you. You just feel it. You just feel it when you walk out of it. But yeah, I do like him in the movie. But I mean, like, honestly, Ronald Lee Ermey, he's just, for me, like I think
for
most
a lot
people
of
would
people.
agree that's the big standout. He pretty much just kind of carried that character on with him throughout his career.
So I think another element of this film is definitely the sound and the soundtrack. Do you have any thoughts about that?
It's got great sound design. I love the score. It's very subtle, but it's really haunting. It's very memorable. It's something that really stuck out to me through this watch. And then the soundtrack too is great. It's just the way it plays in, and just kind of the way it really juxtaposes with what's going on. It's just a really unique thing. It's something Kubrick is known for.
A scene I particularly love is the surfing bird scene where they're kind of going through in the second half of the movie when they're kind of showing this derelict like city, which I love how Kubrick films that with the buildings on fire. It just really transports you there. And I really love that you're talking about the juxtaposition between what's going on and the song, and that's like the perfect moment of that. And there's something I just really love about just that shot where it's like kind of panning and you're seeing all these soldiers kind of sitting behind cover in this war zone, just sort of happily waving to the camera as the tanks are going off next to them. Like, it's just no big deal in the day at the office. This is, this is what it looks like.
Yeah, they do that a few times too.
Yeah.
I like the image when it pans through and it's all the bodies covered in.
It definitely
covered
pierces
in lime.
the veil in that way.
Yeah, and like he comes up when Joker first gets there,
Yeah.
reports to that platoon or whatever, and he's sitting there with the camera. And the guy's just taking pictures over and over again. The guy keeps smiling and then just keeps talking about what's going on. Keeps smiling and just keeps going about his business. But it's just a unique movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely an absolute classic, not just in war films, but just in film in general, and also one of the greatest Stanley Kubrick films. It definitely went up a little bit as far as Kubrick movies. I think I would actually put it a little bit above 2001, especially in rewatch value. I think that I would probably rewatch Full Metal Jacket before I rewatched 2001. But it doesn't quite take the top for me for Kubrick, but it moved up a little bit on my list with him after this rewatch. I really enjoyed it even more. So that's been our general thoughts on Full Metal Jacket. So John, what is your final grade and summary for Full Metal Jacket?
7.62 millimeter Full Metal Jacket. This is Stanley Kubrick. This is a haunting and brutal realization of war, and just the message and themes that Stanley Kubrick is really trying to portray is really just that duality of man, and all of the hypocrisy that went into the Vietnam War, and honestly, looking at these themes in the movie, looking at the second act. I know we never mentioned Cowboy either, but there's that scene where they're doing the interviews. It's such an important part in the movie when they're doing the interviews with each soldier individually and what they're talking about. It's such an important couple scenes in the movie, and if you've never really quite grasped what Kubrick was going for in this movie, pay close attention through those scenes, because it really shows like the parallels and the hypocrisy that was going on during Vietnam. This is something that you have to watch if you're watching a war movie marathon. I mean, this is a memorable movie. It's one that sticks with you. It's got great performances. Also, there's a really fun video out online of Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert arguing this movie, debating this movie, and Roger Ebert gave it a thumbs down, and it's a big surprise, and Gene Siskel was just debating him hard with this movie. And they were talking about the 30 years anniversary of Paths of Glory, and Gene Siskel says, "What do you think this movie will be 30 years from now?" And I thought it was just an awesome video to kind of pick up and watch for this review, but I'm leaning a little bit more towards the Gene Siskel end, and I give Full Metal Jacket an A.
Yeah, there's definitely not a lot of times that I'm going to disagree with Roger Ebert. He's definitely a kind of a hero, obviously, seeing that we both critique films now. He's someone that we both looked up to, but I gotta say, he's probably wrong on this one. This is a fantastic, absolute classic movie. Like I said, not just for war films, but just for film in general. It's definitely one to go out and watch. There are things, though, about it that I'm not 100% crazy about. The first half to the second half feels a little disjointed. The characterization isn't that deep. And I kind of feel like when you've got movies like Apocalypse Now and Platoon right before it that touch on a lot of the same themes that Kubrick pulled off in such a great, great way, but just messages that we've heard before. It's in the boot camp sequences that sets the movie apart and makes it different than those films. But like I said, there's still some of those things that we've tread this ground before. But that being said, though, I'm still going to give Full Metal Jacket an A. So, guys, that has been our review today for the 30-year anniversary of Full Metal Jacket. Tell us your thoughts in the comments on Full Metal Jacket, what you think about Kubrick in general. Tell us what your favorite Kubrick film is while you're at it. You can find us on Twitter at BacktoFeature. You can also find us on Facebook at /BacktoFeature. I've been Giovanni Carlo.
And I'm John Vandeloo.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Roger, it is not as good as those two films, which are among the greatest films ever made. But for you on this show to give thumbs down to Full Metal Jacket, I think is a gross mistake. I think it is a film worth seeing.
I'm trying to put the movie in a context, and I'm trying to tell people that it is not as good.
And this is the show where you give Benji the Hunter a positive review and not Kubrick.
Now, Gene, that's totally unfair because you realize that these reviews are relative. Benji the Hunter is not 1/3 the film, 1/10 the film that the Kubrick film is, but you know that the same thing happens, that you review films within context. So it's not fair for you to compare those two reviews. And you know it, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
No, I'm not.
7.62 millimeter. Full Metal Jacket.